World Series is here. Starts tomorrow. MLB playoffs have been, the wild card round was not great. It was all sweeps. Division series round was not great. And then you got to the championship series rounds, DBacks, Phillies, and then the Rangers and Astros. Both go to game 7. Both are electric. And I think both the underdog potentially came out on top. Yeah, they did. They did. The World Series in 2023 is going to feature the DBacks and the Rangers, two teams that aren't in big cities, big fan bases, aren't both known as historically one of the greatest franchises, right? It's not the Phillies, it's not the Yankees, it's not the Dodgers, it's not the Red Sox, it's not all these teams. And for once, something is happening in baseball that is good for the true baseball fan. All the different rule changes, all the different things that have been implemented into the game of baseball over the past few years have all been put into place by the commissioner and by the league to tailor towards the casual outside baseball fan, to bring more baseball fans in. And that was done successfully this season. Attendance was up, viewership was up, revenue was at an all-time high. Everything they were trying to do, they got done. But what I don't think they anticipated happening was producing a World Series with two teams that are a direct product of the new rule changes. Okay, overall in the Major League Baseball playoffs, here's how you win. Excellent pitching. Not just good hitting, but extremely well-timed hitting. Great defense. And lastly, the ability to come from behind with a multi-run deficit, move guys over when you need to, steal bags and bunt. Play fundamentally sound offensive baseball. Guess what the Diamondbacks do? They have the ability to come from behind, as they did multiple times against the Phillies. They move guys over. They steal bags with incredible speed. They play great defense. They've bunted a few times. They've had extremely well-timed hitting, and their pitching has been exceptional. Guess what the Rangers have done? Proved the ability to come from behind, have played great defense, lacked it and found it in the timely hitting category, and their starting pitching has been unfathomable at the top of the rotation. And that's been enough for them to get to the World Series. But teams that have great defense, with the shift limitations, the shift restrictions, teams that can steal bases, teams that can make contact, put the ball in play, and move guys over, have unselfish at-bats, and one step further, literally bunt guys in sacrifice situations, bunt guys over, those teams will ultimately prevail in the postseason. The pace of play has significantly increased. And with that, so has the need for urgency, the need for youth, and the need for speed. What do the Diamondbacks have? Urgency, youth, and speed. What do the Rangers have? Urgency, youth, and maybe not a ton of speed, but there has been a clear and concerted effort by the entire Rangers offense, the offensive approach, whatever it was coming into the year. Get in the box, get ready to go. We got a clock on you guys now. Be ready, get your foot down, hit the fastball. Those guys, at the beginning of the year, the Rangers were the best offensive team by a million miles. Everybody was tearing the cover off the ball. They came back down to earth just a little bit. Other teams started to make, a little bit of adjustment against the Rangers lineup, and they cooled off. But as we've gotten to the postseason, we've seen the same Rangers offensive team. Point being, this World Series is a direct product of the new wave of baseball and the ability to have sustained success. You got to have youth. You got to have a little bit of veteran leadership. You got to get in the box, be ready to go, have short, quick, compact, better approaches and better swings, the ability to move guys over, the ability to make contact, and then you got to have excellent starting pitching at the top. You got to have 3 or 4 reliable guys at the back end of your bullpen, and you're going to have a lot of success. And where teams started to falter in those situations were like the Phillies this season. The Phillies fell victim to the big moment. And I think there's a difference between playing well in the playoffs in front of your home team and falling victim to the pressure. Because the Phillies, when it was a tie, when it was a 0-0 game in the first inning, or God forbid the Phillies just jumped out on top, scored 3 in the first on 2 home runs, and it was all home run derby at Citizens Bank, and it was dancing on, and it was great. I was a big fan of it. I thought it was awesome. And that's when the Phillies were at their best. Because then Zach Wheeler went out on the mound, Aaron Nola went out on the mound, Ranger Suarez, and they just rolled over whoever they played. They got up 2-0 in the first. Final score 8-1. Just rolled them because they would swing for the fences. They'd connect on a few big swings, and they'd hit balls out of the yard, and then they'd coast from there. That's kind of how they found their success in the early parts of this year's postseason and a lot of last year's postseason. They would jump on a team, they'd score a few, and they wouldn't look back. But this year, when it came down to crunch time, when it came down to we need to move a guy over, we got a guy in scoring position, we need to drive him in with a base knock. We got to shorten up here. We can't punch out. We're down by a run. We're tied late. Phillies guys just didn't come through. And that's the streakiness of what baseball could be. But to tell you that Harper, Trey Turner, Castellanos, and Schwarber in the last 2 home games were something like 1 for 24 collectively, all that tells me it's not that those guys are bad. It's not that those guys were selfish. It's just the pressure of the moment got to them, and they, as a team and with their identity, didn't have shortening up and putting a ball in play to move a guy over. They didn't have that in their back pocket. That's all the Diamondbacks do. That's all they do. All their young guys, Marte, Corbin Carroll, Christian Walker, Gabriel Moreno. It's like single, double, single, maybe mix in a home run, but also mixed in there is a stolen base, is a ground ball to second to move a guy over, is a sac fly. That is what wins you playoff games. And with the Phillies, it was live by the long ball, die by the long ball. Now, it had enough sustained success against the Braves and in the early parts of the series against the DBacks. Water always finds its level, and it found its level with the Diamondbacks style of play, the ability to come back, manufacture runs, grind, battle at bats, and ultimately find themselves in the World Series. Same can be said with the Rangers. Watch how the Rangers went about their at-bats in the last couple games in the American League Championship Series. Nobody just had give up at-bats. Nobody had monster, giant, spin in the ground swings with 2 strikes. Short, compact, Seager, Simeon, Adolis Garcia, Evan Carter, Josh Young. Battle, grind, stick your head in, foul pitches off, be in the box, be ready to go. That's what's going to win you games in this new style of baseball. That's why that's why the Rangers and the D-backs are both in the World Series. You also see some guys, man, and some players, they just elevate their game. When it comes time for postseason baseball, they elevate their game. You've seen it from some starting pitchers already. And I heard it talked about a little bit earlier today and earlier this week, right? Got like Ranger Suarez dominated after having an okay, pretty solid year as a starting pitcher. Comes in the playoffs, unhittable. Nathan Eovaldi, same thing. Brandon Fad for the Diamondbacks, same deal. If I was a general manager or I was in charge of assembling a baseball team in 2023 and moving forward, I would get 4 number 2 starters, 4 number 3 starters in my rotation. Mix in an ace if you can. I would get reliable, injury-free, back-end bullpen guys, 3 or 4. I would get 1 guy who hits homers. That's his main deal in the lineup. I'd get 1 guy who's a good all-around hitter, hits homers and drives balls in the gap, and can run a little bit. And then the rest of my team, I would try my best to emphasize speed, contact, low strikeout rate, and the ability to move guys over. Seriously. But in today's game, in today's day and age, you can't have 5 guys that all hit home runs that can't run very well in your lineup. However cool that may look when you're looking at it on paper, that doesn't win games anymore. It doesn't win games. Athleticism is back in baseball, very clearly. But teams that live and die by the long ball will ultimately fall out of contention, whether that's in the regular season or late in the postseason. Ask the Braves and ask the Phillies. 2 teams, the Braves, who lived by the long ball in the regular season, got to the playoffs, weren't able to hit those same level of home runs because pitching in the postseason is elevated to the next level. And home runs become more rare and they come at much more of a premium. Braves eliminated. Phillies living and dying by the long ball. Schwarber and Harper and Bohm and Real Muto and all these guys. Homers. All super fun. All awesome. Love it. It's electric. Citizens Bank's going crazy. Then those home runs don't come, or you fall behind a little bit. Solo homers don't help. Home runs become more of a premium. You face better pitching. All of a sudden, you're not in the playoffs anymore. D-backs cannot hit homers like the Phillies can. And yet, the D-backs beat them. That's the state of the game in 2023. That's the state of baseball. For those of you who were wondering how and why both of these teams ended up in the playoffs, that's the exact reason. Pitching is elevated. Home runs become more of a premium, and athleticism and unselfish baseball is rewarded in the postseason significantly. Not saying the Phillies were a selfish team, because they weren't. Not saying the Astros were selfish because they weren't. Home runs become more rare, and certain styles of play, certain execution is more rewarded than others in the postseason.